bother to pick up. Okay, test 1 2, test 1 2. So I'm live, so rejoin and see if the audio is working. I'm live. Test 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 1 2. Test 1 2. Did you find it? Do you hear me? Can you hear me now? I'm going to close the door now. That's what looks like we've got another person join in. Say hi in the chat. Feel free to ask a question. Our new visitor is my first time attempting this. Hey, got another one. Hey, everybody, welcome. Say hi in the chat and feel free to ask a prepper a question. Right now, I have a tabletop burn supposed to be really, really efficient. Um, I also am working on an refrigerator for medications and baby formula and showing how it's possible for that to be solar powered. I know that's a big thing. People trying to keep baby formula and medications and insulin cold during a hurricane or power outage. So they coming up soon, and I get to test my very first power station that should arrive the next day or two. I've never played with a prefab station, but this one's got some really nice specs at a really nice price. So I'm anxious to give that a try. Did that audio come through okay? Okay, great. Yeah, there's a couple of minute delay apparently from what I see in the chat and when I talk by. So that's good to know that things are working. Hey, we got a couple new visitors in there. Hey, everybody. Say hi in the chat and feel free to ask a prepper a question. ones are physical fitness and rational food storage. So, we joke about like, overweight people who think that they're going to go be Mad Max out, and I'm not in the greatest of shapes, but I'm not going to be out playing Mad Max. Um, the other big thing is storage. Food storage out to be a lot harder than it actually is. Um, everyone's talking and MREs have their place, but it's a very, very, very niche place. Also, there's lots of companies out there who are making prepper food and survival food like ReadyWise uh, and For Patriots. And if you look at the amount of calories that you get versus the amount of money that you spend, it's it's incredibly expensive. Food storage is very, very simple. Store what you eat what you store. So into your pantry and look at all the canned stuff that you have, and then go buy more of it. Um, we learned this during the freeze. I had a bunch of canned food that we pulled out during the blizzard, and we had never actually eaten it before. Like Axe hams, and it was not very good. And we ended up defaulting to wolf chili because we eat it all the time, and it was easy to cook. And we actually had Velveeta during the freeze because we eat that all the time. So before you spend $150 on a 72-hour bucket from For Patriots or Prepper whatever or ReadyWise or any of those other food storage survival food companies, take $100 and go to your grocery store and go to canned food aisle and just buy stuff that you eat now and just buy more of it. Soups and stews and cans of chicken and tuna fish. You go to Costco, they've got really, really, really cheap canned chicken there, or Keystone, something a little nicer. But food storage, people really overcomplicate it, and it's really not that hard. Preppers are also obsessed with beans and rice, and I find that hysterical. I'm actually going to do at some point about why rice is bad for prepping. It doesn't have it is cheap. You can, in fact, go to Walmart and buy a bag of rice for like $30, but that bag of rice only has like 10,000 calories in it and requires 8 gallons of water to reconstitute it and a whole bunch of fuel to cook it. So I might be cheap. I don't think that the calories that you get out of it, plus all of the fuel you have to use to cook it, is worthwhile, in my opinion. If you really look at the whole total of what it takes to cook, a pound of rice or whatever, I to me it doesn't make sense. Whereas I can get like 5 minutes and eat something a lot more filling and a lot more interesting than eating raw rice. So I think preppers need to just take a couple of steps backwards regarding food storage. And it really does depend on what you're prepping for. If you're an end of the world prepper, that's waiting for World War III or a global apocalypse or something, you're going to have a different perspective than more reasonable people that are, a 2 to 4 week tornado or hurricane kind of situation. So that's the one situation where having, MREs or like freeze dried food would make sense, is if you really believed in like a global apocalypse and you had $1 million to dig a bunker in your backyard and to stock it for a couple of years, then you do freeze dried food. But I'm not that kind of prepper. I'm not a apocalyptic end of the world kind of prepper. I got my own theories on that, but yeah, I mean, for a 2 to 8 week time period, or even longer than that, most canned food, like Wolf brand chili, like I said, we eat all the time. It's got a shelf life of like 2 years, and by most reports, shelf lives are kind of a recommendation. They're not a rule. People are eating food long after it expires, but if you if you are storing what you eat and you eat what you store, and when you go to the grocery store and you buy chili and you put the new stuff to the back and the old stuff to the front, so that way you're constantly eating it and you're constantly rotating it, then you're not really worried about it expiring because you're kind of constantly cycling through it. So it's not that hard. I make a rule that I always try to have between 6 and 8 cans of chili at a minimum in my pantry at any given time. So if I eat two during the week, then I buy three on Sunday. So now I'm up one. And if I'm out of town, like I was just out of town, I don't have to worry about going to the grocery store because I've got what preppers call the deep pantry. I could lock, like during COVID. I could lock my front door and not step foot outside my house for 2 weeks, maybe four if I really stretched it, and be fine. And if you have 2 weeks worth of food in your pantry where you can not leave the house for 2 weeks and be eating, you are ahead of 98% of the population, and you are covering 98% of reasonable kind of prepper threats that are out there. So, power outage, hurricanes, tornadoes, freezes, stuff like that. Like, you're in pretty good shape. Um, and the other thing that preppers don't really talk about because not sexy is realistic threats. Like, we look at these big, like, doomsday kind of like World War III stuff, but there are far more plausible, realistic things to be concerned about. We call it prepping for Tuesday, not doomsday. And that's where I'm at, until I win the Powerball and I get myself, 50 or $100 million. There's really not much you can do about, know, nuclear attacks and stuff like that. I'm not Bezos. I don't have a bunker, don't have the money for a bunker. And to me, it's not really a viable threat. So I'd rather spend that $100,000 on something else. So, I said in a video I posted a long time ago, fight the fights that you can fight. If you have $1 million to go build yourself a bunker, knock yourself out, you're doing a lot better than I am. So, I look at the things that are what I consider realistic, which is, I see Friday using a hay box cooker will work good for rice and things that normally use a lot of fuel. Yeah, it's like a rocket stove. Rocket stoves are really fuel efficient. So yeah, I know that there are kind of ways to cook rice, but like the when I made the comment, I was on a Facebook prepper group for a hot minute about prepping, and I got into a fight with someone about rice, and it got really nasty. And they said, well, half the world survives on rice. But yeah, because those are third world countries because they have an unlimited supply of wood that they can burn. So they're not really worried about buying fuel because they're just like cutting down trees and burning. So, but even if you took fuel out of the equation, the amount of water that you have to use to cook the rice, because it's like a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every cup of rice, you got to have 2 cups of water. And, water, in my opinion, is more valuable than food since you'll die from dehydration a lot faster than you'll die of hunger. So, do you really want to burn up really valuable water to cook a cup of rice that'll give you 150 calories? The fuel is free. You're still using up a lot of water to cook that rice and getting back, 150 some odd calories. So I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I'm not I'm not convinced. I need more convinced. No, I need to be more convinced. We got a couple other viewers out there. Feel free to say hi in the chat and ask a question. And there is a delay. This is my first time doing this. There's a couple of minute delay from me talking and the chat replies, apparently. Everybody out there in TV land, go ahead and say hello and ask a question. Hey, welcome. Our guest just joined. Go ahead and say hello in the chat, and feel free to ask a question. Hey, Joe, thanks for joining. There's a couple minute delay, but feel free to ask a question, Joe. Insulated box that you put your cooking vessel in, boil water and rice and beans and put it in a box to finish cooking. Okay, so it's like I've never heard of this, but so it sounds like you have like a kettle that you heat up with water and you put the rice into it, and then you put the whole kettle inside of a different ice chest to hold the external heat inside. So it's like a full of boiling water inside of another box to hold the heat in. Yeah, very cool. Joe, ask a question. Or Fry Daddy, go ahead. Hey, welcome to our latest visitor. Say hello in the chat. Feel free to ask a question. Big question. Let's put it out there. What ham radio do I buy to talk to my friends in the apocalypse? That was a fun one. And that was my most controversial video, and I had a lot of fun doing it. Ham radio is something that comes up all the time on Reddit. Have I done any new solar projects? We'll jump to that. So I have built, if you're kind of caught up, I have a couple of solar carts in my dollies. I really like the dolly style. So I have a 12 volt, 300 amp hour cart with a 20 amp MPPT charge controller on it. And then I finally got to build a 24 volt system. So it's two 12 volt, 200 amp hour batteries together in 24 volt. And And I've got this really cool comparison video where I put the exact same space heater on the 12-volt system and then put it on 24-volt system to show how the current draw is half. So I was really pretty pleased with that. I think that 24 volts is superior, is the superior output. I think that 48-volt systems like EG1s and stuff like that have a technical limitation that doesn't really work well for small scale. And then on 12 volts, your current is just so high. You've got to have, hey, Audrey Jean, feel free to ask a question. But 12 volts, when I was doing my testing on my space heater to see my 4-gauge wire getting hot on 80 amps really bothered me. So it was nice to see going to 24 volts and that current gets cut in half. And now I'm much more comfortable. Uh, hey, Audrey, I am not going to talk about politics. No guns, no politics. Those are hot topics, and I'm not going to go there. So at 24 volts, all of your current gets cut in half. So that makes things much easier. My DIY build was 24 volts at 5.8 kiloamps. Yeah, that's pretty similar because I'm at, I guess, 5.1 kilowatt hours with two 12-volt 200 amp hours. So yeah, we're pretty similar. But I think that 24 volts really is superior, just in all those ways. And also, like I said, you can use a cheaper charge controller, like a rich solar or something like that, and use it on 24 volts and get more current out of it. You get free power. At the higher voltages, you can squeeze more wattage out of it and not have to spend any extra money. So I think 24 volts is where it's at. But I have my very first pre-made solar power station arriving tomorrow. So I'm going to review my very first pre-made system ever here in a couple of days. Audrey, what's my favorite color? Blue, probably. That kind of bluish. I like blue. I like black. I like blue. You got a prepper related question, Audrey Jean? Hey, Joe, if you're still out there, feel free to ask a question. You've been hanging in there for a little bit. Go ahead and throw it out there. Fry Daddy, how is your build? What did you use? And there is a little delay, everyone. So if you ask a question in the chat, it takes a minute or two for it to pop back up on my end. How do you get prepared for a tornado? Good question. So I have been through hurricanes. I've never been through a tornado, so I'm going to shoot from the hip on this. The first, I think the first and most important thing is structural integrity. How is your house? Do you have shutters? Do you have, Lexan shutters or plywood on your windows? And how strong is your house? Will your house physically survive if it gets hit from a tornado? So I think that would be priority number one. Putting away loose things in your yard, which I've done during hurricanes, boarding up your windows and making your house as hardened as possible. And then the second thing, house is pretty sturdy. Okay, good. And then the second thing would be to to be self-sufficient in your house for 1 to 2 weeks. So let's assume that the tornado is like an F5 or something, just devastating. So, based on what I've seen on the news, let I built it through. Okay. I see that fried Eddie. So let's assume that, all the power lines are down, all the water lines are busted, all the roads are closed. It's going to take FEMA or the Red Cross a week to get to you because they've got to clear out the roads. So, step one, harden your house. Step two, make sure that you are completely and totally self sufficient for 1 to 2 weeks. Gas, fuel, solar, whatever you need to eat, drink, bathe, power, yourself. Imagine you're on an island and you are completely and utterly on your own for 1 to 2 weeks. Um, and, and so, think your way through that. Like, okay, I cannot leave my yard for 2 weeks and I have no utilities. What do I do? Hey, David Jones, welcome. Say hi and feel free to put a question in the chat. So, and then the other thing that I would think of tangentially to that, Audrey, would be, do you have a chainsaw and things like that to help like kind of clear brush and clear debris? So that way you might be able to kind of dig yourself out. But I would call that kind of lower priority. So number one, my advice would be harden the house. Number two, make sure you got food, water, power, tools to be able to be self-sufficient for 1 to 2 weeks until FEMA or the Red Cross can get to you. Hey, welcome new people. Feel free to say hi in the chat and ask a question. I have a chainsaw and food and water. Okay, great. Yeah, I don't believe in EMPs. You have a chainsaw and food and water. Okay, that's good, Audrey. Do you have enough food and water and the ability to cook that food for you and your family for 1 to 2 weeks? Bug out bag for tornado. The problem, again, I've never been through a tornado, so I'm shooting from the hip here. Let's see this. I'm shooting from the hip. The problem with the tornado, as opposed to a hurricane, is that they kind of pop up out of nowhere. So, how much advance notice do you have for a tornado? Like 15 minutes? And they move really, really, really fast. So, if a tornado is coming, you're going to have about 10 minutes, if that, to grab your bug out bag and try to outrun it. Whereas a hurricane, you can see a hurricane coming for 7 days. So, people who get trapped during a hurricane and didn't leave, which I have been through hurricanes when I lived in Florida, I don't have a lot of empathy for people who get caught in hurricanes because you've got like 5 to 7 days advance notice. But tornadoes are kind of like earthquakes. You don't have any advance notice that they're coming. Okay, Audrey, so that was a yes. You got ways to cook for it. That's great. Mhm. Anybody out there in TV land? Feel free to ask a question. Yeah, storms are very unpredictable. So I'm just seeing that now in chat. Yeah. And so whether there's certain things, like I said, with hurricanes, you can kind of see them coming, but flash flooding or tornadoes, stuff like that, like you don't have enough advance notice. Anybody else out there? Feel free to ask a question. I'll take a stab at it. Got some new toys coming in. Welcome everybody. Joe, Fry Daddy, David, feel free to ask a question. I'll take a shot at it. David, would you like to hear my rant on EMPs? It's one of my favorite topics. Hey, welcome. Looks like we got a couple other people joined. Say hi in the chat if you'd like, and feel free to ask a question. I'll take a shot at it. Welcome. We got a couple others. What's your final opinion on sand batteries? Great question. So somebody's been watching the videos. Great. Okay, so I worked a lot on sand batteries. I made 5 or 6 videos on sand batteries. Tried to do as much scientific testing as I could do. Unfortunately, you can't cheat physics and you can't cheat thermodynamics. So the amount of heat you put into a sand battery is going to equal the amount of heat you get out of a sand battery. And that sounds really obvious when you say it out loud, but there's hundreds of guys on YouTube who are making sand battery videos who kind of missed the physics part. So sand batteries make sense in a very large scale, and they also work in situations where the heat that you're putting into them is free, which is free meaning geothermal, which is why sand batteries are really big in like Scandinavia or something like that, because they have these geothermal vents, basically like volcanoes that are really close to the ground, really close to the surface. So if you have basically an unlimited source of heat directly below you that's free, and then I can put 10 tons of sand in a grain silo and run some copper tubing in it and let the heat of the lava warm up that sand, then I'm getting that heat kind of for free. And they do the same thing like in Saudi Arabia and out in the desert, where they use parabolic mirrors to focus the sun onto a 20 tons of sand in the middle and heat it up because the sunlight is free. So at really big scale, really big scales where your power coming in is free, then it kind of makes sense. But I had I put in 600 watt or 300, 400 watts of electricity into a hot water heater element. And yeah, I did in fact get, 50 pounds of sand up to 300 or 400 degrees. But as soon as I unplugged the power, then it immediately cratered. And I've done conversions between like wattage and BTUs and stuff like that. So, people in my original sand battery video, people asked like, "Oh, can I heat my house?" I'm like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. There is no way that 2 solar panels and 50 pounds of sand is going to heat your house. Maybe a greenhouse, if the greenhouse is like 10 feet by 10 feet, maybe. But think about like a $20 space heater, right? Like a tiny little $20 space heater that draws 1,500 watts and puts out like, what is it, 3,000 BTUs. It's like enough to heat a bedroom, maybe. So I learned a whole lot about like physics and thermodynamics, and I got to do like some really fun testing. But Yeah, and I'll get there just a second. So it was fun. It was fun testing, but I still don't think that it's kind of practical. So Fry Daddy's comment was, I think dumping your extra solar power into heating hot water you already are going to use makes the most sense. I agree with that in theory, but I think that so the key word in your statement is extra solar power. So if you've already topped up your batteries and you want to dump load, and you dump load your excess solar capacity into heating water that you're going to use to take a shower that night, absolutely. As far as heating water electrically with solar power, no, I don't think that that makes sense, because I think that direct solar heating with black plastic tubes is far more efficient. I've got a video where I try this. I bought a $40 pool heater, which is basically just a black plastic mat that's about 4 feet square. And I put this $20 12-volt pump on it. And I heated up a 20 or 30-gallon barrel of water from 70 degrees to 120 degrees in like an hour, just by circulating it through a black plastic tubing. I mean, that's incredible. I'm actually working. I'm friends with a guy named Sean Overton, who's doing the Dust Up Ranch project here in Texas. And he and I are talking about building a shower for him. And he's out in the middle of nowhere in El Paso. And so I told him that's what I would do for hot water, is do direct solar heating through black plastic tubing. And the only energy you need is like 50 watts to run a little bitty RV pump to circulate the water through that black tubing. Carly, no. I mean, you could cook ramen on a sand battery, but why bother? You just need to go to Walmart and spend 20 bucks on a butane camp stove and cook your ramen. Works very well, and it's very fast. Go ahead. Anybody else out there? I'm going to start ranting about EMPs here in a second. If I don't get another question out there. EMP is one of my favorite topics. Yeah, it's true, Carly. You know, butane camp stove from Walmart for 20 bucks, and I live in Ohio, really cold winters. So one of the other funny things, Fry Daddy, about thermodynamics is, make sure your house is really well insulated. Make sure all your cracks and crevices are all filled. I did a video on a thermal camera. We live in a new house. CME. Oh, we'll get to EMPs and CMEs in a second. Again, one of my favorite topics. But thermal cameras getting really cheap, and it was really cool walking around my house with a thermal camera and like seeing all the air leaks underneath the doors and underneath the windows and stuff like that. So yeah, make sure your house is really well insulated. When we moved from a town called Pflugerville into our house, our place in Pflugerville is like 40 years old, and we were there during the freeze. 40-year-old house, single pane windows, and during the Texas blizzard, we had ice on the inside of our bedroom windows because they were single pane glass. So this is one of those, like, ounce of prevention is pound of cure kind of things. But if you live in Ohio, I'm sure that your house is built really well. My friend Sabrina lives in Colorado, and their houses are made to kind of withstand that. Um, Joe, do you need to use any water filters for your water barrel if it's just for a garden? There's debate on that. So I'm going to assume that you are referring to a garden for vegetables that you are going to eat. So let's assume you're talking about watering your vegetable garden. I would. I don't think that I would be as vigorous with filtering it as if I was going to directly drink it. But, at the very least, run it through a sediment filter, which will take out the rocks and the bird crap and stuff like that. And I think that I would run it through a ceramic gravity drip filter because they're pretty cheap, like the double bucket ones, like the Berkey knockoffs, and I have one of those, just to take any like high level chemicals that, the question is like, what's your roof made out of? If you have a metal roof, probably not that big of a deal. But there's debate that I've seen, like if you have an asphalt roof, the chemical, asphalt roofs and asphalt shingles are made with rubber and plastic and stuff like that. And there's basically oil. So if you're getting rainwater collection off of an oil based roof, then that's going to go into your water. So, you can build a bucket filter, for under $50. So I think if I had an asphalt roof and I was trying to water a vegetable garden for consumption, I I I think I would. I think I would go through, a fabric filter to get like the gravel and chunky stuff and bird crap out, and then I think that I would run it through a grab a ceramic drip filter to take any kind of chemicals out. So I think I would. All right. Anyone else? Go ahead and pipe in there before I attack EMPs and CMEs for David Jones. That's going to be a long rant. So anybody else, go ahead and lay it on me. Yeah, some other people kind of popping in and out. I know there's a little bit of a delay. So I'll give you another minute and then we're going to go after EMPs. Carly, tell me that you're on Amazon right now ordering a butane camp stove. I'll send you a link to one if you want. Okay, we're going to go for it. EMPs. Oh, keep getting commercials. Yeah, I've got commercials turned on. This is my first time doing this. So please let me know if you've got commercials popping up because I don't know how this works. I did turn them on just to see what would happen. Tell me how annoying they are or are not, and how frequently they come up. I've been on for 40 minutes, so I guess it's every 10 minutes or so. I guess they pop up, but I have no idea. Okay, here we go. EMPs, electromagnetic pulse. So this is every doomsday prepper's wet dream or worst nightmare, depending upon how you phrase it. So the EMP scare was caused by three things. Number one was a book that came out, I guess, in the 80s or 90s called 1 Second After, that was written by Ted Koppel, the journalist. And in one, which I've actually never read it, but in 1 Second After, he talks about an EMP attack that basically fries everything electrical in North America. Yes, I can control the commercials. And then in the original Ocean's 11 movie with Brad Pitt and George Clooney, they have that device that takes out Las Vegas. That was an EMP device. And then the third thing was the Chinese weather balloon incident a couple years ago, where people were afraid that there was a EMP bomb on the weather balloon, that they were going to fly that over Nebraska and zap the whole country. So here's a reality check. And let me give you how I know this. I have a friend who works for Los Alamos who builds things that go big boom, and we have talked at length about this. It is true that EMP bombs, like in Ocean's 11, exist. However, their range is a couple of blocks, just like in Ocean's 11. There's no EMP bomb that will fit in the back of a Ryder truck that would take out North America. EMPs are caused by nuclear detonations. So if a high altitude nuke goes off over your head, you have much bigger issues to deal with than whether or not your Baofeng works. It is also true that if you took like an Ocean's 11 style bomb and put it in a plane, and like on 9/11, and you put an EMP bomb in a plane and you flew it over Nebraska and detonated it, it would cover a greater area about the state of Nebraska, because nuclear weapons go off at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of feet up in the atmosphere, which is far above the altitude of a commercial airliner or weather balloon or a hot air balloon or a Cessna. So yes, it is true that you could put an EMP Ocean's 11 style device into a hijacked plane, fly over Kansas or Nebraska and set it off, and it would affect the middle of the country, but not the entire continent. So the other thing that comes up is Starfish Prime. So go onto Wikipedia and look up Starfish Prime. Starfish Prime was a nuclear detonation that we did out in the Bikini Atoll in the mid 50s, and the EMP went all the way around the Pacific Ocean and made telegram lines in Hawaii catch on fire. Okay. Well, I'm a ham radio operator, and radio waves travel really, really, really well over water. And it was also in the 50s before we understood things like shielding and stuff like that. So again, it was caused by a nuclear detonation. So if there was a nuclear detonation on like the East Coast, you might have an EMP that kind of goes around, the continent. But again, it's caused by a nuclear detonation. So if a nuke goes off, you have much greater things to worry about than whether or not your Baofeng works. David also mentioned a CME. CME is coronal mass ejection. A CME is not an EMP. They're kind of similar, but they're not the same thing. And we're talking about the Carrington event. There's another good Wikipedia hole for you to go down. So a CME is when the sun gets indigestion and burps, and it shoots out plasma, which then ionizes the atmosphere and makes like aurora borealises and things like that, and causes kind of similar effects to an EMP. It's an act of nature. There's just not a lot you can do about it. So, again, and this actually did happen, I guess, in the 90s. Like the New York blackout was caused by a coronal mass ejection, if I recall correctly. But again, because it's coming from the sun and the earth is rotating, it's only going to hit sort of one side of the earth as the earth spins. So you have a CME comes, and here's New York, so it's going to hit right here, but it's not going to go all the way around the hemisphere or all the way around the continent. So it'll be not pleasant, but it's not going to be a world-ending kind of thing, or a global catastrophe. It'll be kind of a localized thing, which is what we saw in New York. It's not going to be fun, but not real high on my list of concerns. Coronal mass ejections do not keep me up at night. Solar flares, quasars, things like that, those are global catastrophes. You're not going to live through it anyway, so I'm not worried about like those really big, nasty, like supernova black hole kind of thing. Not worried about it. It's, again, fight the fights that you can fight. If you hit the Powerball and you got a couple $1 million to blow on building a bunker to survive a CME or an EMP or a solar flare, knock yourself out. This is a rant I went on Reddit. People are trying to buy EMP proof bug out vehicles, and they want to buy like Dodge Rams and F-150s. Like, you got like a spare $30,000 or $40,000 to spend to buy a truck to keep parked dismantled just in case an EMP hits? Like, how's your food storage? Like, how's your water storage? Like, you literally have 40 grand burning a hole in your pocket that you're going to waste on buying a backup vehicle that's EMP proof. Okay. If I had a spare $1 million laying around, I might think about it kind of just for the fun of it. But, fight the fights that you can fight. You fight what's in front of you. So there's my rant on EMPs. It's one of my favorite topics because it's so misunderstood. I read a lot of apocalyptic fiction on Amazon, and every apocalypse book on Amazon is either zombies or EMPs. That's every book. Every book out there is zombies or EMPs. And it's just totally misunderstood. But it's like a big scary thing. And yeah, there is some science around it, but people just don't understand like how it really actually works. So got some new people out there. So thanks. GSM. Fry Daddy, Carly, Joe, Audrey, you got anything else for me? Lay it on me. I love talking about prepper stuff. What you got? Looks like we got some new people joining. Go ahead and say hi in the chat. Feel free to ask a question. There we go. And there's a delay on my end. So welcome, everyone. Welcome. Feel free to ask a question. Next rant, no one's got anything, will be about ham radio. Let's post a survey. How many people out there in the chat own a Baofeng? Raise your hand. Give me a thumbs up or a smiley or something in the chat if you own a Baofeng UV5R. Hey, JD, welcome. Welcome for joining. JD Bond, feel free to ask a question. A 9R, okay? JD, are you, and I'm not picking, I'm just asking, are you a ham radio operator, or did you just buy it just for prepper stuff? I'm not picking. More than 8? Yeah, there we go. So JD, Joe, Fry Daddy, are you guys all hams? I'm a ham. I'm a general class. I'm just curious. Who's actually a ham out there? And I'm not a judgy ham. I don't care if you have a license or not. Don't care. I'm just asking the question. Okay. Fry Daddy's a tech. Cool. Good on you. JD, not a ham. Again, not judging, just asking. Have you played with it, JD? Do you have it all programmed? Have you done any testing on either ham or GMRS, FRS, or MERS or anything like that? Fry Daddy, are you kind of active with the ham stuff? Are you hitting repeaters and getting on nets and things like that? Are you interacting with kind of ham community? Tiff's a tech. I know there's a delay, so I'm just waiting to see if you guys answer. Not really. I live in a mountain bowl. Yeah, it's radio stuff can be really tough. If you live in a crappy place, um, it can be really difficult. Um, Fry Daddy, if you're interested in any of that, have you ever thought about doing? And I've always wanted to do this. Have you seen my video on crossband repeaters, Fry Daddy, where you build your own repeater to relay your signal? And JD, when you say fully programmed, are you planning on using ham frequencies, MERS frequencies, FRS, or GMRS, or what? I'm curious. What frequencies are you planning on communicating on? I think MERS is way underrated. I think people should be talking about MERS more frequently. 154.6. Fry Daddy building one, yeah. Uh, if you want, I have 2 videos on crossband repeaters. Don't do the dual Baofeng thing. Buy a TYT 8000D, which is a crossband repeater in one radio. So you only have one battery and one antenna to deal with, and they're like $80. I actually used one when I lived in an apartment and I couldn't get out. Put the thing on an ammo can with a roll-up antenna in a tree and go climb up your mountain and go stick it up as high as you can do and as high as you can get, and I bet you can bounce your signal up and out of your bowl and get out into the rest of the world. It'd be really fun. Joe, what about you? Are you a ham? Are you not judging, just asking? Are you a ham, and what's kind of your radio status? Is it programmed, ready to go? Are you playing with it at all? Hey, Audrey, are you still out there? Have you done any radio stuff? That's something that comes up with tornadoes for emergencies. Um, I think that an FM radio is the most important thing you can buy. Just for preps, I'd like to take a class for ham. Listen here a lot. Have an old Messenger 250. Joe, have you programmed it with local repeaters? Even if you're not planning on talking, just listening to chatter can be really important. So have you at least programmed it for any kind of interesting channels nearby, local repeaters, FRS, GMRS, MERS, things like that? Use the old 333, have a combination of VHF and UHF. We use the 333. Channels are you using? Are you JD Bond? Are you using FRS FRS GMRS frequencies, or what? I'm again just kind of curious, like specifically what frequencies you're kind of planning on using. Great question, Tiff. Do you have a frequency that you guys have planned to talk on with your neighbors, a meeting place? And that's really important to know where to meet your person. FRS GMRS, cool, totally fine. I got no gripe with that. I'm going to go ahead and put in a plug here since I reviewed these. So I have Baofengs. I have a couple of them, but this is a Retevis A1, and I've done a bunch of videos on this. This is an awesome radio, particularly compared to this. So Baofengs are like $20-$30. Retevis is like $50-$60, but USB direct charging has has 1,000 memories instead of 28 memories, has GPS built into it. You can actually send your GPS coordinates between radios. That's not going to work. Anyway, so you get latitude and longitude built into the radio, and then you can send your coordinates to another radio. Weather band is built in, air band is built in. It's waterproof. I actually have it in a video where I dropped this in a bucket of water and it survived. So this is the Redibus A1. I can't say enough about as an entry level radio. It's just amazing compared what the durability, the feel, the capabilities that you get out of a Redibus A1 versus a Baofeng. I cannot say of this highly enough. I think this is a great starter radio, and this is now kind of my daily car radio. I have a Yaesu that's like 12 years old. It's a tank, but if you're looking at getting started on something and you want to take a step up from a Baofeng, or you're starting from scratch, Redibus A1, I'm all about it. I'm really pleased to hear. Normal operations, yeah, 3 hours for 3 minutes. Yeah, I'm familiar with the 333 rule. It's a good kind of plan. But yeah, if you just pick a frequency, you call it GMRS channel 2, and 462.755, and you just tell everyone that you're gonna meet on that, you ought to be okay. I think the 333 rule really works well for different modes. Like if you're a general class and you're doing um, HF like 20 meters, 40 meters, and then VHF simplex, and then CB where like you're rotating between bands. Because most people who are not hams don't know that radio waves are affected by the weather and by the phases of the moon. So certain frequencies work better at certain times of day, and certain frequencies work better at certain times of the year based on the weather. So having a variety of options of different frequency ranges actually gives you kind of a bunch of backup contingencies. Anybody else out there? Go ahead, ask me a question. Joe, David, Fry Daddy, Carly, what you got for me? Prepping is one of my favorite topics. Go ahead, ask me anything. What else you want me to rant about? Go ahead, ask me a question. Ask me anything. Joe, David, JD. Yeah. Do you ever plan on going ultra prepper and getting a homestead? I wish. It is my absolute fantasy. But I still work and I'm hybrid, so I'm in the office 2 to 3 days a week. So I'm very limited as how far I'm willing to drive. I already drive 90 minutes every day, in the morning and 90 minutes at night. And I live in Central Texas in the greater Austin area. And the cheapest land is like 6 or 7 hours away. And that's just not commutable. Um, and I'm also getting old. Like I don't think that I could live on a farm and work on a farm. I would love to have, I don't want to call it bug out property because I think that bugging out is dumb for most people, but I would love to have a hobby ranch that I could make sustainable and do, solar and rainwater collection and stuff like that. So if we did have some sort of scenario, I would have a sustainable property that I could go to and hang out with. Like when bird flu goes human to human, or rabies goes human to human, or something really bad, I got a place to go chill out. Um, but it's just financially not in the cards. Would I stay in Texas if I had a choice? So let's say all things being equal, I also have retirement to deal with and stuff like that. I don't think so. I think, if money was kind of not really an object, and and retirement and finances and family weren't really an object, and yeah, we'll come back to that in a second, JD. So, um, no, because JD, Joe, to answer your question about Texas, um, and I'll say this kind of very specifically, the locations in Texas where land is unrestricted and reasonably priced are out west towards El Paso. They're in the middle of the desert. And so you have no infrastructure. I mean, that's why the land is so cheap. That's why I very nearly bought 7 acres for like $10,000. It was like $1,500 an acre, but it was 6 hours from Austin and 2 hours down a dirt road. So 2 hours to the closest gas station. And you had to have a 4x4 for those last 2 hours. So it's not going to be fun. But I'm on a couple of real estate websites, and so I get dream emails. There's places like North Carolina, South Carolina. They're like more wooded and have trees and have soil and have ponds and running water and streams. And so like you can have your little piece of paradise, but there's still a paved road that will get you into a town in 90 minutes. And it's like 10 acres for like $20,000 or $30,000, which is, still very reasonable. So there's just not a lot of usable land in Texas that's affordable. If you just want to park an RV in the middle of the desert and ride ATVs and shoot guns and cook meth and live off a generator and crap in a hole in the ground, there's land for you in Texas. But it'll be really tough to like grow crops or like actually live there because you're so far away from anything, and the soil's no good. It's like cattle ranch land, or it was cattle ranch land 100 years ago. Now it's kind of all dried up. So Texas is a really big state, but like all the good land is either gone or just really, really, really expensive. And I look at places like Kansas, Nebraska, Georgia, or the Carolinas, where like you have water and soil and trees, and you can still get property for $2,000 or $3,000 an acre. So all things kind of being equal, I would go elsewhere. JD Bond, I love this. If people have $1,000 generating 2 gallons of gas, yeah, it's like the people on the internet who have like 15 guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition, but like don't have any water storage. Like where's your priorities? Um, I'm not going to go off about guns. I should switch off of that topic, but yeah, I get it. Like there's more to it, and generators are really complicated. The other problem with generators that most people don't think about is you have to do maintenance on a generator. You have to change the oil in a generator every 24 hours. And generators are really loud. Even the inverter ones are still loud. And yeah, you might get 12 hours on a gallon of gas. So that's a day, maybe two. But in a hurricane, or if you're with Audrey during tornado where you have no power for 1 to 2 weeks, well, now multiply that out. Now that's 5, 10, 15, 20 gallons of gas. It's heavy and it's kind of dangerous. Do you really want to have a 30-gallon drum of gasoline in your garage? I have propane because it's more stable, and I have a propane barbecue grill. I think propane is far more versatile than a gas generator. It also doesn't expire ever. But yeah, there's a lot of tail end to a generator. You can't just go to Harbor Freight and buy their $99 special and a $10 gas can that you put 1 or 2 gallons in and think you're good to go. I mean, if you're going tailgating or you're going camping for a weekend, yes, but not for a week or too long, or a week, 1 week or 2 week long tornado or hurricane or Hurricane Katrina or some sort of big apocalypse. Like, you've got to think your way through it, which is why there's multiple reasons why I'm doing solar, but the big one is no noise. It's dead silent. Number two reason, no fuel storage. I don't have to worry about storing gasoline or propane or anything like that. I don't have to worry about the safety aspect. Yeah, it's expensive. It is expensive. I have these 200 and 300 amp hour batteries that were $700 or $800. That's a lot of gasoline. But to me, the pros outweigh the cons. Like, I get like less power, but I don't have to worry about noise. I don't have to worry about fire hazards. I don't have to worry about fuel storage. And I've got my power needs down to where it's okay. So I think for the vast majority of people, batteries and solar make more sense if you think about kind of duration. If you're just prepping for like 72 hours or something like that, okay, go buy a generator for $300 and a 5-gallon gas can and hope for the best. But the further out you go, the harder it gets because you got to keep storing gas, and you're gonna have 1 to 2 gallons per day, depending upon the size of the generator and how much you're planning on running it. Yeah, noise is a big risk. Only run generator to charge your batteries. Yeah. So during the Texas blizzard, we are 4 years ago now, my neighborhood was just an absolute dead silent ghost town. So if I would have been running a generator, my entire neighborhood would have known it. And we didn't live in the nicest of neighborhoods at the time. So that was really eye-opening for me. Do you really want to be the only person in your neighborhood running a generator? And how are you going to deal when people come knocking on your door asking to charge their phones and stuff like that? So from the safety and security aspect of it, yeah, I mean, generator, batteries and solar, it's silent. Yeah. And I don't just practice good light discipline, close your curtains and stuff like that. So that way you don't shed light out, um, and just keep it real chill. We're in a neighborhood, and so there's people around us, but I would keep it real mellow. Fun questions. Anything else? Lay it on me. Fry Daddy, give me another one. JD, you want to ask about ham radio stuff? Go ahead. Joe, fun question about staying in Texas. I hope that answered your question. Go ahead and give me another one. We'll go another 15 minutes or so. It's 9 o'clock here. I haven't had dinner. But I am enjoying this. I love talking about prepping stuff. So anyone out there in TV land, go ahead, lay it on me. David Jones, K index is going up again. The chat's moving very slow. I saw it pop up and then my screen freaked out. K index. David Jones, tell me, what is the K index? Space weather. Space weather is the K index, is what the Google tells me. So interesting to keep an eye on. So David Jones, do you know what the solar sunspot cycle is? We're nearing the top of the solar sunspot cycle. So ham radio operators getting really excited. JD, you are absolutely 100% correct. You are absolutely correct about window air conditioning. I have had similar experiences. People don't understand how much power their central AC runs, and it's a lot. And if you want to go buy a 10 kW generator to run your entire house, you're going to be sucking down gas. A lot of it. You're going to be sucking a lot of it real quick. So you are absolutely correct. Go buy Midea U-shaped inverter window AC. They're like $400, but they draw like 600 watts. And then a 2000 watt, not Coleman, Sportsman's generator, and make yourself a cold room. You seal off one bedroom, put the air conditioner in the window over there, and just cool down one room. So yeah, you are absolutely right. They'll run their central AC off generator for about a day, unless you got a lot of gas stored or you've got it plumbed into your natural gas line. Fry Daddy, do you do gardening? Do you have a garden? I've messed around with it a little bit. I tried doing bucket potatoes and I failed. Anybody else out there? Go ahead and lay it on me. I am enjoying this. I hope other people are too. And don't be afraid to hit that tip button. Also, if you are enjoying my videos, enjoying my commentary on prepping and EMPs, you can hit that little tip jar if you want to send me a buck or two. Audrey, you still out there? The tornado lady? Looks a couple other people have joined. My counter's coming up. I'm about to start gardening season. Potatoes my go-to. Anybody else out there? Any new people who have joined? Hi in the chat. Feel free to ask a question. Fry Daddy, do you do potatoes in the ground, or do you do the bucket method? In the ground, yeah. In Central Texas, we don't have dirt. We have rock. So, I couldn't go into the ground if I wanted to. Books and videos. Yeah, YouTube. Yeah, so we don't have topsoil in this part of Texas, so we have to do the bucket method because just there's no dirt here. Welcome everyone. Welcome new people who have joined. Feel free to ask a question about anything prepper related or whatever. David Jones, what's an EMA? What's EMA, David? EAM. What is that? Electromag something. What does that stand for? David Jones, tell me what that is. Emergency action message, like nuclear launch codes. Hey, welcome. We got another couple people join. Say hello in the chat. Feel free to ask a question. No, David, I've never heard an emergency action message. They're going to be encrypted anyway. If we got one, then we'd be at war, and that would be very, very bad. So, no, I've never heard an EAM. Stories, basic country skills. I've heard of that. Fry Daddy, the stories books. I've heard of them. Since I don't have dirt here, I can't really garden, but I have heard that name before. We'll give another 5 minutes or so, and we'll call it a night. But anybody out there in TV land got a prepper related question about anything? Go ahead and lay it on me. We'll take a stab at it. Joe, I had relatives in Murfreesboro, Illinois, I guess. It's pretty up there. It's green. Anybody else? Anybody else out there in TV land? Go ahead and ask a question. Thanks for joining, David. Appreciate you. Like having people in. Thanks. It's like we got someone else just join. If you new arrival, say hi in the chat if you'd like. Go ahead and ask a question. Prepping, solar, ham radio, EMPs. I do love talking about EMPs. What is vulnerable to AMP? 96 Harris. I'm assuming you're asking about EMPs. Is that accurate? Hey, David. Cool, from Canada. Good to have you on. Hey, for everyone out there, if you're comfortable, put your location, your state. We'll see where everyone is. We know we got an Illinois, and then I'm assuming we got a Midwest with Aura because we got tornado stuff. So if you feel comfortable, put your location if you don't mind. What is vulnerable to? I'm assuming that 96 Harris is asking about EMPs. What is vulnerable to an EMP? The answer is no one really knows. So got my radio here. Idaho. Cool. Thanks, Daddy. So radio waves are a really weird thing. And they're very directional. So let's say I have an EMP over here coming in, and my antenna, my radio is plugged in with my antenna is on, and that EMP hits my antenna perpendicular. This radio is going to be toast. But if my radio was turned 90 degrees and that radio wave hits it like this, 50 50. Or if my antenna was not connected, EMP comes 50 50. So radio waves, as someone who's been a ham for 13 years now, and I'm certainly not an expert, but I've had enough experience that radio waves are black magic. They do really, really, really weird things that are very difficult to predict. And an EMP is just a huge radio transmitter. And so you really don't know. You really don't know. The short answer is anything electrical, anything with like complex electronics. People think like that their flashlight's going to get fried by an EMP. Yeah, I don't know if I believe that or not. Depends upon how close you are and how strong the EMP is. But Harris, you missed my rant earlier about EMPs. Short answer is EMPs are a joke. Don't lose any sleep over EMPs, because if an EMP goes off, it's because a nuke went off, and you're going to be fried from the fallout or the radiation anyway. So don't worry about if your radio is going to survive an EMP, because if you're that close, you're probably not going to survive it anyway. So don't sweat it. EMPs. I am literally more afraid of zombies than I am of EMPs, and I'm not kidding. I'm literally more afraid of rabies turning into a zombie plague, which is not implausible, than I am of EMP. Anybody else? Anybody else out there? Question, comment, concern, thoughts? Anybody? We're gonna go one more minute. Call it hour and a half on the nose. But if anyone's got any other questions, comments, discussion, I'll keep going as long as there's activity until I fall asleep. Anybody else out there in TV? Joe, thank you so much for hanging out and participating in questions. I appreciate you. See you on the next one, Joe. And I'm going to call. Thanks so much, everybody. Catch you on the next one.